It is interesting to see local elections capture such worldwide attention, but I think when you look at these elections, when you look at the record voter turnout, when you look at in all of these districts, these pro-democracy candidates overwhelmingly defeating these very established pro-Beijing politicians, what we are seeing here is that these elections are sort of called a referendum on the protest movement nearly 6 months on, and so what we're seeing is there is still support behind the demands of the protesters, and now there is a legitimate political mandate behind those demands, and that is something that Hong Kong's leader, Carrie Lam, can no longer ignore. Up until this point, the government had been saying that there is this silent majority in Hong Kong, and now it is very much more difficult for the government to say that.
And to what degree are the politicians who've done very well across the weekend connected to, say, the students that we saw during that standoff on campus last week?
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how these district councillors will work in the wider opposition camp in Hong Kong, because local district councillors, they don't really have a lot of political power. They deal with parking meters and bus routes and that kind of thing. But what they do is they make up the committee that elects Hong Kong's leader. They will now have more of a say in that election. But I think looking at this more broadly, one of the key demands of the protesters is that they want to be able to directly elect their own leader, and that this now gives weight to that key demand.
And Carrie Lam says she's going to reflect. As she is reflecting and she looks at her options, what will be in front of her?
Up until now, the government has largely relied on the police to control these protests. Now, I think the pressure is on Carrie Lam to come up with a different solution and change tactics. And the pressure is on for her to do that. She said she's going to listen to the protesters. We'll have to wait and see, because if she doesn't come up with a different tactic, she risks inflaming these protesters who now are kind of rejuvenated, and there's now a reinvigoration in the protest movement.